In the blood-soaked age of sail, when the oceans groaned under the weight of gold, slaves, and empire, there lived a man who seemed to step out of myth itself. His name was Henry Avery, sometimes spelled Every, and though he may not have reached the same level of notoriety as Blackbeard, Bartholomew Roberts, or Sir Francis Drake, his name would echo across the seas for centuries. For one reason, Henry Avery may have been the only pirate who ever truly got away with it. He emerged suddenly, burned bright with greed and violence, and then slipped into the shadows of history, leaving behind whispers of kingdoms, buried treasure, and bloody raids that shook the mightiest empires of the world. This is his story. The Forgotten Sailor. Very little is known about Henry Avery's early life, and perhaps that is fitting. He is a ghost even at his beginning. Born around the mid-1600s in England, Avery came of age in a world torn by wars, colonization, and the rise of the transatlantic slave trade. Some say he served dutifully in the Royal Navy, enduring the endless hunger, disease, and cruelty that plagued common sailors. But the record falls silent for decades, as if Avery was simply biding his time, waiting for the moment his name would matter. That moment came in the 1690s. Avery joined a ship known as the Charles II, a privateering vessel meant to hunt down French ships in the Caribbean. Officially, he was in the service of the English crown. In reality, the Charles II was a prison of sweat and brutality. The ship's Spanish authorities treated the English crew like dogs, beating them, starving them, and worst of all, refusing to pay them for months on end. Desperation breeds mutiny. And Avery, patient, calculating, ambitious, was ready. In 1694, the crew rose up. They stormed the decks, cut down the officers, and turned to Avery as their leader. The mutiny was a success. The ship was theirs. From that moment forward, Henry Avery was no longer a nameless sailor. He was captain. He renamed the ship the Fancy, and with a single declaration, he cast aside law, country, and God. He was now a pirate. The rise of the Fancy. The newly christened Fancy sailed south toward Africa, its sails fat with greed and bloodlust. For months, Avery and his men terrorized merchant ships along the African coast. French vessels, Danish vessels. One by one, they were seized, looted, and sometimes burned. The crews were often given a choice: join Avery or die. Many chose life, swelling Avery's numbers until he commanded a force of more than 150 hardened men. These weren't the desperate runaways of taverns and ports. These were killers, thieves, and seasoned sailors, welded together by greed and fear. Under Avery, they became a machine, and their eyes soon turned to richer prey, the pilgrims of the Red Sea in 1695. Avery learned of a target so enormous, so audacious that if successful, it would make him the richest pirate alive. The Mughal Empire, one of the wealthiest empires on earth, had a fleet of ships returning from the Red Sea. On board were Muslim pilgrims, holy men and women returning from Mecca after the sacred Hajj. Alongside them were treasure ships belonging to none other than Emperor Aurangzeb, the Grand Mughal of India. These ships carried silks, ivory, jewels, and gold, wealth beyond imagination. Avery knew it would be dangerous. The Mughal fleet was enormous, guarded by warships and crewed by riflemen. But Avery was ambitious, perhaps reckless, or perhaps simply lucky. He joined forces with other pirates, including the infamous Thomas Tew. Together, they lurked in the Red Sea, their black flags snapping in the wind, waiting for the pilgrims to appear. And one day, the sails appeared on the horizon. 25 ships, glittering in the sun like jewels scattered across the waves. The trap was sprung, blood in the water. The Mughal fleet panicked at the sight of the Jolly Roger. They burned their slower ships, sacrificing them as floating obstacles to block the pirates' path. While their fastest vessels cut for open water, chaos erupted. Cannon fire thundered. Smoke blackened the skies. Most of the Mughal fleet escaped, vanishing over the horizon. But Avery had his eyes on two great prizes. The first was the Fateh Mohammed, a lumbering treasure ship. After a brutal firefight, Avery's men stormed aboard. The fight was short and savage. When it was over, Avery claimed an astonishing haul, $50,000 in gold and silver. More than most pirates would see in their entire careers, but Avery wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He wanted the crown jewel of the fleet, the Grand Mughal's own flagship, The Ganges Sawai. The Ganges Sawai, the beast of India. The Ganges Sawai was a monster of a ship, the largest in India, bristling with dozens of cannons and manned by more than 400 riflemen. Against Avery's lone vessel, it should have been suicide, but fate, or luck, or perhaps the devil himself, was on Avery's side. When the Fancy opened fire, its very first cannon shot struck the Ganges Sawai's mainmast, shattering it into splinters. The great ship slowed, crippled. Then disaster struck the defenders. One of their own cannons exploded, ripping apart the deck and spreading chaos. Sensing blood, Avery ordered his men to board. What followed was not a clean victory. It was a massacre. The Mughal defenders fought valiantly, but panic spread like fire. Some claimed their captain leapt overboard to escape. Others said he hid below decks, ordering slave girls to fight in his place. Whatever the truth, the battle devolved into slaughter. Avery's pirates swarmed the ship, blades flashing, pistols roaring. Men were cut down, beaten, or hurled into the sea. And then came the horrors. The butchery. What happened aboard the Ganges Sawai was so vile, so monstrous that even hardened pirates were sickened by the tales. The men were tortured, mutilated, executed. The women, young and old, noble and poor, were subjected to unspeakable violence. Rape, degradation, humiliation. Some chose suicide, slitting their own throats or throwing themselves into the sea, rather than endure what Avery's men inflicted. One of the victims was said to be a member of the Mughal emperor's own family, an elderly woman, dragged through the blood-slicked decks, brutalized before being discarded like trash. By the end, the decks ran red, the air choked with screams, smoke, and the stench of human misery. Avery and his crew walked away with treasure worth between $325,000 and $600,000. In modern terms, tens of millions. Enough to buy kingdoms, enough to make Avery a legend. But legends come with a price. The pirate king of New Providence, Avery's men, sailed for the Bahamas, swaggering into New Providence with their holds bursting. They bribed the island's governor with ivory tusks, posing as humble slave traders, and for a moment, it seemed Avery had done the impossible. He divided the spoils among his crew. Though not without treachery, he cheated other pirate captains, fleeing before sharing properly. But the men didn't care. They drank, feasted, and reveled. They had what every pirate dreamed of: riches, freedom, and victory over kings. Yet while Avery drank, the world burned. The wrath of the Mughal word of the atrocity reached India. Emperor Aurangzeb flew into a rage. His subjects had been slaughtered, his relatives dishonored, his pilgrims robbed. To him, this was not piracy. This was blasphemy. Aurangzeb struck back. He arrested English merchants in India, held them hostage, and demanded retribution. Trade between England and the Mughal Empire, one of the most lucrative in the world, was at risk of collapsing. The East India Company, terrified of losing their empire of profit, scrambled. The English government issued proclamations branding Avery a menace to mankind. A $500 bounty was placed on his head. The East India Company doubled it. Hunters, soldiers, and mercenaries scoured the seas. It was one of the first true global manhunts in history. But Henry Avery was nowhere to be found. The disappearance of a pirate king, what became of Avery, is one of the greatest mysteries of the golden age of piracy. Some claim he sailed to Ireland under a false name, living quietly until death. Others say he was scammed by merchants, tricked out of his fortune, and died penniless, unable to even afford a burial. There are whispers of something darker, that he was secretly captured and executed by the East India Company, his death erased from the records to spare embarrassment. And then there is the legend. Some say Avery fled to Madagascar, where he carved out a pirate kingdom, a fortress hidden in the jungle. 40 warships under his command, 15,000 men, a utopia of thieves and killers, where gold was minted with his face stamped upon it. King Avery, ruler of a lawless paradise. No evidence was ever found. No coins, no fortresses, nothing but rumor. But the story endured because perhaps it had to, after all. The idea of a pirate who truly got away, who defied empires, slaughtered the innocent, and retired in glory, was too powerful to die. Legacy of blood and gold. Henry Avery's career as a pirate lasted barely 2 years. 2 years, and yet he left scars that would last for centuries. He proved that a single pirate could challenge empires. He inspired thousands of desperate men to set sail, dreaming of their own golden score. His raid on the Ganges Sawai helped spark the so-called Golden Age of piracy, an era when the seas became a graveyard of plundered ships and broken bodies. But his story is not one of romance or heroism. It is one of greed, cruelty, and shadows. A tale soaked in blood, built on the screams of pilgrims and the fury of an emperor. Henry Avery is remembered not because he was noble, but because he vanished. Because he became a ghost. Did he die in poverty, forgotten in some English alley? Did he drown at sea, his treasure rotting beneath the waves? Or is there, somewhere on the lost shores of Madagascar, a kingdom of bones and gold where Avery still reigns, crowned in silence? We will never know. But one thing is certain. Henry Avery achieved what all pirates dreamed of. He struck rich, he vanished, and he became legend.